Chapter 4. The Weight of Stars. The grand approach stretched before them, a wide avenue lined with trees whose silver leaves caught starlight and turned it into something gentler. Beyond, the council spires rose like frozen music, their crystalline peaks lost in the eternal twilight that bathed this realm. Aeliana stood perfectly still, her back straight, her hands loose at her sides. But Gunnar had learned to read the small things, the slight tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers flexed once against her palm. She was nervous. "You've done this 100 times, he said quietly. "Not like this," she replied, not looking at him. "Before, I was a guardian. One of many. Now," she trailed off. "Now you're the bridge," he finished, "between Alfheim and every other realm that needs to trust you." "Yes." He stepped beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "They wouldn't have chosen you if you couldn't handle it." Finally she turned to him, and in the soft light of Alfheim's eternal dusk, her eyes held something he rarely saw there: uncertainty. "I'm going to hate parts of this role," she said. "I know. The politics, the committees, the careful language when I'd rather just speak plainly." "I know," he said again, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. She exhaled, some of the tension leaving her. "You understand." "Command is command," Gunnar replied. "Doesn't matter if you're leading soldiers or diplomats." "The weight feels the same." For a moment they simply stood together, two leaders in the quiet space before duty called them forward. Then Aeliana's posture shifted, subtle but complete. The uncertainty disappeared, replaced by the calm dignity he'd seen her carry into 100 battlefields. "Ready?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I'm going anyway." They walked together toward the council building, passing beneath archways carved by hands that had understood stone before humanity learned to stack it. Elven guards stood at intervals, their armor catching light in ways that made them seem more like art than soldiers. Each one nodded respectfully as Aeliana passed, and each one's gaze lingered on Gunnar with barely concealed curiosity. The wolf of Earth, the human who'd killed demons and stood beside guardians, the man who'd somehow earned a place at Aeliana Vale's side. They were met at the great entrance by an official in deep blue robes who bowed to Aeliana with practiced grace. "Guardian Vale, the High Guardian awaits you in the Hall of Reflection." "Thank you," Aeliana replied. The official's gaze moved to Gunnar, curiosity mixing with something that might have been wariness. "Commander White, welcome to Alfheim." Gunnar inclined his head. "Thank you for the hospitality." They were led through corridors that felt less like hallways and more like carefully orchestrated transitions between spaces, each turn revealing something new, each doorway framing a view that seemed impossible. Gunnar had learned not to question the architecture of magical realms. Some things simply were, and trying to apply earthly logic only gave you a headache. The Hall of Reflection opened before them, and there, standing near the terrace where starlight met stone, was Maelorian. The High Guardian turned as they entered, and Gunnar was struck again by the sheer presence the elf carried. Not height, though he was tall, and not bulk. He was built like a blade, lean and efficient. It was something else. Authority earned through centuries, tempered by wisdom that had seen empires rise and fall. "Aeliana," Maelorian said, his voice carrying warmth beneath its formality. "Welcome home." "Master," she replied, the title coming naturally despite the decades since her apprenticeship had ended. Maelorian's gaze moved to Gunnar, and something shifted in his expression. Assessment, perhaps, or recognition. "Commander White," he said, stepping forward with his hand extended in the human gesture of greeting. "The Wolf of Earth." Gunnar accepted the handshake. The High Guardian's grip was firm, precise. A warrior's grip, not a politician's. "It's good to see you," Maelorian replied, a hint of amusement in his ancient eyes. The High Guardian studied him for a moment. then nodded. He turned slightly, gesturing to 3 figures who had been standing near the terrace. "Come, there are those who wish to meet you." The first was a tall elf in dark armor, his bearing unmistakably military. He approached with the economical movements of someone who'd spent centuries on battlefields. "Commander Velis," Maelorion introduced. "He leads Alfheim's forward defense forces." Velis extended his hand, and Gunnar shook it. The elf's grip was slightly stronger than necessary, not aggressive, but testing. "The human who fights with dire wolves," Velis said, his voice carrying the rough edge of a career soldier. "I've heard stories." "Most stories get better with telling," Gunnar replied evenly. "Perhaps." Velis released his hand, but his eyes remained sharp, assessing. "Your wolves, they're bonded, yes, not summoned or trained." "Bonded," Gunnar confirmed. "Alpha chose me. I didn't choose him." "Interesting." Velis crossed his arms, his tactical mind clearly working through the implications. "Our war beasts are trained from birth, bred for specific purposes, but they serve out of conditioning, not choice." "Choice makes them partners," Gunnar said. "Not tools." Velis was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps our methods are too rigid." "Yours adapts." "Has to," Gunnar replied. "We don't have centuries to perfect our approach. We have whatever works in the moment." Something like respect crossed Velis's weathered face. "Pragmatic. I can appreciate that." The second figure approached, an elf in elegant robes of deep green, his bearing carrying the careful precision of someone who lived in the world of words rather than weapons. "Councillor Thalis," Maelorion said. "He oversees our diplomatic relations with the Outer Realms." Thalis's handshake was cooler, more formal. His expression held the practiced neutrality of a career politician. "Commander White," he said, the title somehow sounding both respectful and slightly condescending. "Your organization operates outside official channels, does it not? The Pack, I believe it's called." "We do," Gunnar replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Most supernatural threats don't wait for official channels to mobilize." "Indeed." Thalis's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "But doesn't that create complications? Operating in shadows, answerable to no formal authority?" "Complications are what we solve," Gunnar said, his tone remaining even. "Channels are what we bypass when lives are at stake." Thalis's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Not approval exactly, but acknowledgement. A pragmatic answer, though I suspect the governments you operate within might find it less reassuring. "The governments we work with understand the value of results over protocols," Gunnar replied. "Those who don't can file complaints after we've saved their citizens." This time Thalis did smile, though it was sharp. Spoken like someone who's never had to navigate a committee hearing. "I've sat through plenty of hearings," Gunnar said. "I just don't let them slow down the mission." Thalis studied him for a moment longer, then inclined his head. "I suspect we'll have interesting conversations in the future, Commander." "Looking forward to it," Gunnar replied, knowing full well that interesting conversations in diplomatic speak usually meant bureaucratic obstacles. The third figure was younger, at least in appearance. An elven woman, perhaps 30 years old by human standards, though likely 10 times that in reality. She wore the silvered robes of a guardian, though less ornate than Aeliana's. "Guardian Lysara," Maelorion introduced. "One of our junior guardians, recently elevated." Lysara's greeting was more open, less guarded than the others. "Is it true you faced a void warlock?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "At Eldermire?" "Maelorion faced the void warlock," Gunnar said, gesturing to the High Guardian. "I just made sure my people survived long enough for him to win the fight." "I heard you held the line while your forces were being torn apart," Lysara pressed, "that you refused to retreat even when the situation became hopeless. Gunnar's expression remained neutral. Retreating would have meant leaving wounded behind. That wasn't an option. Lysera's eyes brightened with something like admiration. That's why she chose you. The comment hung in the air for a heartbeat. Mylorion's gaze sharpened slightly, and even Thalis looked interested. Gunnar simply met Lysara's eyes steadily. Aeliana doesn't choose people, he said quietly. She recognizes who they already are. Lysara smiled, and this time it was genuine. Well said. Maelorion cleared his throat softly, drawing their attention. I must speak with Aeliana privately before the ceremony begins. Commander White, you're welcome to remain here, or explore the grounds if you prefer. The ceremony will commence in 1 hour. Gunnar glanced at Aeliana, who met his gaze with a slight nod. I need to do this alone. I'll be here, he said simply. Take your time. Maelorion turned to Aeliana, his voice taking on a different tone, still formal, but with an undercurrent of something deeper. Walk with me. Aeliana hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. Of course. As they moved toward a doorway that led to what appeared to be a private garden, Gunnar caught the briefest exchange between them, her nervous, him steady. Mentor and student, even after all these years. Then they were gone, and Gunnar was left standing in the Hall of Reflection with 3 elven leaders who were still deciding what to make of him. Valis broke the silence first. You really killed a void warlock? Maelorion killed it, Gunnar said again, patient. I distracted it long enough for him to land the killing blow. Still, Valis said, a hint of respect in his voice. Standing against something like that requires more than tactics. It requires will. It requires not having a better option, Gunnar replied. Thalis made a thoughtful sound. Practical to the end. Tell me, Commander, do you find elven politics as tedious as I find human bureaucracy? Gunnar's lips quirked slightly. Politics is politics. Doesn't matter what species is running it. Now that, Thalis said, I can agree with. Lysara had moved to the terrace, looking out over the crystalline cityscape. You should see the view from here at midday, she called back. Well, what passes for midday in Alfheim? Everything turns gold. Gunnar joined her at the railing, taking in the impossible architecture spread below them. It's beautiful, he said simply because it was. She's taking on a heavy burden, Lysara said quietly, her voice lower now that the others had moved off into conversation. Ambassador Guardian, bridging worlds that don't always want to understand each other. She knows, Gunnar replied. Do you understand what it will cost her? Lysara asked, turning to look at him directly. The compromises, the loneliness, the constant weight of every decision affecting thousands. Gunnar met her gaze. Better than most. Lysara studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Yes. I suppose you would. She paused. The council will watch her closely. Some will question her judgment, especially regarding. She gestured vaguely toward him. Me, Gunnar said flatly. Your relationship, Lysara clarified. Not because they doubt your capability, but because guardians are meant to remain unattached. It's tradition. Sometimes tradition becomes law in people's minds, even when it isn't written anywhere. Aeliana can handle scrutiny, Gunnar said. I know she can, Lysara replied. I'm asking if you can, because they won't just question her. They'll question you, your motives, your influence, whether you're a complication or an asset. Gunnar turned to face her fully. I've been questioned by governments, intelligence agencies, and military brass across 3 continents. I can handle a few politicians who think they know better. Lysara smiled slightly. You really don't care what they think, do you? I care about results, Gunnar said. And I care about her. Everything else is noise. Good, Lysara said, her smile widening. Because trust me, there will be a lot of noise. Maelorion led Aeliana through the hall's eastern passage, into a private garden that had been cultivated for meditation and quiet counsel. Ancient trees formed a natural canopy overhead, their silver leaves filtering starlight into something soft and forgiving. They walked in silence for a time, teacher and student, though those titles felt increasingly inadequate for what they had become over the centuries. "You're nervous," Maelorian observed, not looking at her. "I am," Aeliana admitted. There was no point in lying to him. He'd always been able to read her. "Why?" She considered the question carefully. "Because I'm about to take on a role I'm not certain I'm suited for." "You were my apprentice for 70 years, Maelorian said. "You've served as a guardian for over 2 centuries. You've maintained the balance through wars, political upheavals, and cosmic threats. What makes you think you're unsuited for this?" "Because I'm a warrior first," Aeliana said. "You know this." "I solve problems with action, not diplomacy. I'd rather draw my blade than sit through another committee meeting." Maelorian stopped walking, turning to face her. "Then you understand exactly what I went through when I accepted this position." Aeliana blinked. "You?" "I was like you once," he said, and there was something in his voice. Memory, perhaps, or old frustration. A warrior, a guardian who believed that action was the only language worth speaking. The council chose me for this role, and I fought it. For years I resisted. I hated the endless meetings, the careful language, the compromises. "What changed?" Aeliana asked. "I learned," he said simply, "that sometimes words prevent wars that swords would only prolong. That careful language can build bridges that action would burn. That compromise isn't weakness. It's strategy on a longer timeline." He resumed walking, and she fell into step beside him. "You'll hate parts of this role," he continued. "The bureaucracy, the politics, the moments when you want desperately to act, but must instead wait and talk and negotiate. But you'll learn, as I did, that this work is no less important than the battles you've fought." They reached a small clearing where a fountain bubbled with water that caught the light and turned it into liquid starfire. Maelorian settled onto one of the stone benches, and after a moment, Aeliana joined him. "The weight of leadership," he said, his voice quieter now, "is not the decisions themselves. It's knowing that every decision affects thousands who will never know your name, millions who will never understand what you sacrificed to keep them safe." Aeliana was quiet, absorbing this. "Leadership isolates you," Maelorion continued. "You cannot share the burden of command with just anyone. Most won't understand. Many will judge without knowing the full picture. You'll need to choose your confidants carefully, those who can bear the weight with you without breaking under it." "Like you did," Aeliana said softly. "Like I tried to," he corrected. "I failed at it more than I succeeded. I kept too much to myself, trusted too few. It made me harder than I needed to be, colder." He looked at her directly. "Don't make my mistakes." She met his gaze. "Is that why you're telling me this? To warn me?" "To prepare you," he said. "The Staff of Realms isn't just a symbol. It amplifies your connection to the balance. You'll feel things you haven't felt before, see things you don't want to see, know things you wish you didn't." A chill ran down Aeliana's spine. "What kind of things?" "The weight of realms," Maelorian said. "Their pain, their joy, their slow collapse when the balance tilts too far. Once you take the staff, you can't unknow what it shows you." Aeliana absorbed this, her hands folded in her lap. "You're trying to scare me." "I'm trying to make sure you understand," he corrected gently. "This isn't like being a guardian. You can't simply fight the threats and return home. You are the home now, the bridge, the balance point between worlds that would tear each other apart without someone standing in the middle." "No pressure," Aeliana said, the faintest hint of dry humour in her voice. Maelorian's lips curved slightly. "You'll be fine. Better than fine. You're stronger than I was at your age. You have something I didn't." "What's that?" "Someone who understands the cost." The reference to Gunnar hung between them, unspoken but clear. Aeliana looked away. The council will question that. Let them question, Melorian said firmly. Your heart is your own. Your choices are your own. Never forget that. But, he acknowledged, your heart will pull you one direction, and your duty another. There will be times they conflict, times when you must choose between what you want and what the balance demands. He paused. I'm not telling you to choose duty over love, or love over duty. I'm telling you to be ready for the moment when you must decide. Aeliana felt something tighten in her chest. What if I choose wrong? Then you'll live with it, as we all do, Mylorian said. But you'll choose. That's what leaders do. They make the hard decisions and bear the consequences. They sat in silence for a while, the fountain's gentle sound filling the space between words. There's one more thing, Melorian said finally. The council will test you. Not maliciously, but they need to see how you balance, how you handle pressure, how you respond when challenged publicly. What kind of challenge? I don't know, he admitted, but be ready for it. Some on the council still question whether a guardian can serve two masters, the balance, and a relationship. They'll want to see proof that you can separate the two when necessary. And if I can't? Aeliana asked. Mylorian looked at her with something like sadness in his ancient eyes. Then they'll make you choose. The words settled over her like a weight. Aeliana straightened her shoulders, drawing on the discipline that had carried her through centuries of service. I'm ready, she said. Are you? Melorian asked gently. No, she admitted, but I'm doing it anyway. He smiled then, genuine warmth breaking through the formality. That's my apprentice. They stood together, and Mylorian placed a hand on her shoulder. One last thing. You asked me what changed when I took this role. What made me accept it? Yes. I realized, he said quietly, that the realms needed someone who hated politics, because those who love it too much forget why it exists. Politicians who enjoy the game forget that real lives hang in the balance of their decisions. You'll hate parts of this role. That's exactly why you'll be good at it. Aeliana nodded slowly, understanding. Now, Mylorian said, his tone shifting back to formal. Let's get you ready. The council awaits. They walked back through the garden together, mentor and student one last time before she became something else entirely. Gunnar stood at the window, looking out over Alfheim's impossible beauty, when he felt her approach. Not heard. Felt. Some instinct that had developed between them over the years. He turned as she emerged from the eastern passage. Mylorian at her side. Her expression was composed, but he could see the slight tension in her jaw, the way her hands were held just a bit too carefully. Their eyes met across the hall and something passed between them, understanding, support, shared weight. Mylorian released her with a gentle nod, and she crossed to Gunnar, stopping close enough that he could have reached for her hand if protocol allowed. How are you? He asked quietly. Terrified, she said, equally quiet, but ready. Good combination, he replied. She almost smiled. He gave me the talk. The weight of command, the loneliness of leadership, the impossible choices. Standard mentor speech, Gunnar said. I've given versions of it myself. He also warned me the council will test me, that some still question whether I can balance duty and... She gestured vaguely between them. Us, Gunnar finished. Yes. He studied her face, reading the worry beneath the composure. You can... you know. Can I? She asked, voice barely audible. You've been doing it for years, Gunnar said. This just makes it official. Aeliana exhaled slowly, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. This is going to change things. I know, Gunnar said. There will be times I have to choose duty over everything else. I know that too. Are you ready for that? She asked, looking at him directly now. Gunnar met her gaze steadily. Are you? The question hung between them for a moment. Then Aeliana's lips curved slightly. No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's my girl, Gunnar said softly. Mylorian approached, his presence commanding attention without effort. The council is assembled. It's time. Aeliana straightened, and Gunnar watched the transformation happen, the uncertainty disappearing, replaced by the calm authority of a guardian who had stood against cosmic threats and refused to break. Gunnar, Mylorian said, gesturing toward an archway on the opposite side of the hall. The gallery is this way. You'll be able to observe the ceremony from there. I'll be watching, Gunnar said to Aeliana. She nodded once, then turned and walked toward the council chamber, her bearing regal, her step sure. Gunnar followed Mylorian through the archway and up a winding staircase that led to an elevated gallery overlooking the chamber below. Other observers were already there. 11 nobles, representatives from allied realms, officials whose roles Gunnar couldn't begin to guess. They all turned to look at him as he entered, the wolf of earth, standing in the gallery, while the woman he loved took on a burden that might tear them apart. Gunnar ignored the stairs and moved to the railing, looking down at the chamber below. It was vast, easily 3 stories high, the walls carved with reliefs depicting the history of the Guardians. At the centre stood a raised dais, and beyond it, arrayed in a semicircle, sat the Council of Alfheim. 11 elves, each ancient beyond human reckoning, each carrying the weight of their realm on their shoulders. And there at the base of the dais stood Aeliana. Small from this height, but no less powerful for it. She stood with her hands at her sides, her back straight, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Gunnar's hand unconsciously moved to rest on the railing, fingers tightening slightly. Let them test her, he thought. She'll pass. She always does. Below, Mylorian took his place at the centre of the council semicircle, and the ceremony began. Chapter 5. The Ceremony. The chamber fell silent as Mylorian rose from his seat. He moved with the unhurried grace of someone who understood that some moments demanded reverence, not speed. We gather under the light of stars, Mylorian began, his voice carrying through the vast space without effort, to witness something that has not occurred in all the ages of our people. The creation of a new path, the binding of duty and purpose in ways never before attempted. The council members rose as one, their robes whispering like wind through leaves. Aeliana Vale, Mylorian continued, you have walked the path of the Guardian for 2 centuries. You have maintained the balance in times of war and peace. You have stood at the boundaries between realms and held them against those who would tear them down. Aeliana remained still, her gaze fixed forward. Now we ask you to walk a path no Guardian has walked before, Mylorian said. To become not just a protector of boundaries, but a bridge between worlds. To serve not just Alfheim, but all realms that seek our counsel. To balance not just power, but politics. To wield not just your staff, but words that can prevent the wars your staff once ended. He descended from the dais, and 2 attendants stepped forward carrying something wrapped in silver cloth that seemed to glow from within. They placed it on the dais reverently, then withdrew. Mylorian drew back the cloth with slow deliberation, revealing the Staff of Realms. Even from the gallery, Gunnar could feel its presence. It wasn't like Aeliana's guardian staff, elegant and purposeful. This was something older, something that predated the careful civilization spread below. The wood was pale as bone, almost translucent in places, carved with runes that seemed to shift and breathe when you weren't looking directly at them. At its head, 7 crystals were set in a complex geometric pattern that hurt to look at too long, each one pulsing with its own internal light, 7 colours for 7 realms, all held in perfect, impossible balance. The Staff of Realms, Melorian said, his voice taking on a weight that made the air itself feel heavier, was forged in the First Age when the boundaries between worlds were being established. It was crafted by the first Guardians, those who came before even our oldest histories, as a tool for one who would walk between all realms, speaking with the authority of the balance itself. He paused, letting that sink in. It has waited in the Guardian Vault for 3,000 years, never carried, never claimed, because there was never need for what it represents. The realms remained separate, the boundaries held, the old ways, guardians at their posts, maintaining the balance through vigilance and force when necessary, were sufficient. His gaze swept the council, then returned to Aeliana. But the realms are changing. The boundaries weaken not from assault, but from age, from the simple truth that nothing, not even the fundamental structure of reality, remains unchanged forever. The old ways no longer suffice. Guardians who stand at their posts and fight threats as they emerge cannot address what is happening now. The slow erosion of the barriers themselves, the increasing contact between worlds that were meant to remain distant, the political and magical complications of realms learning to navigate each other's existence. Melorian lifted the staff carefully, holding it horizontally across both hands. The crystals pulsed brighter, as if responding to his touch. "And so we create a new role," he said. "Ambassador Guardian. One who will not stand at a single boundary, but walk between all of them. One who will speak not with the voice of Alfheim alone, but with the voice of the balance itself. One who will navigate not just magical threats, but the infinitely more complex landscape of realm politics, cultural conflicts, and the delicate work of helping worlds learn to coexist." He looked directly at Aeliana now. "You, Aeliana Vale, will be the first to carry this burden. There is no precedent to guide you. No former Ambassador Guardian whose wisdom you can seek. No one who has walked this path before and can tell you where the dangers lie. You will discover what this staff truly does, what knowledge it grants, what price it demands, because no one knows. We have theories. We have the writings of those who forged it, but no one has carried it." In the gallery, Gunnar's hands tightened on the railing. He'd known this ceremony would be significant, but hearing it laid out like this, hearing that Aeliana would be stepping into a role with no map, no guidance, nothing but her own judgment, made the weight of it visceral. "The staff amplifies your connection to the balance," Melorian continued, his voice softer now, but no less intense. "That much we know. But what that connection will show you, what it will demand of you, what burden it will place upon your soul, these are unknowns. The writings suggest it will grant you insight into the needs of realms, that it will show you where the balance is threatened before the threat becomes visible to others, that it will allow you to sense the health of boundaries, the stability of the connections between worlds." He paused, and his next words carried warning. "But the writings also warn that such insight comes at a cost. That seeing too much, knowing too much, can break even the strongest mind. That the staff shows not just what is, but what might be. Possibilities and futures that may never come to pass, but which you will carry with you nonetheless." Silence in the chamber. Even the council members who had voted for this looked concerned now. "Once you accept this staff," Melorian said, "you cannot return to who you were. You cannot unsee what it shows you. You cannot unknow what it teaches. The burden will be yours alone, because no one else can share it. No one else will understand what you see, what you feel, what weight you carry." He held her gaze. "And yet we ask this of you, because you are the only one capable of bearing it. The only guardian with the strength, the wisdom, and the understanding of what this role must serve. You have walked among mortals. You have seen their struggles, their courage, their worth. You do not see realms as abstract concepts to be balanced, but as places where people live. That understanding, rare among our kind, is what will make you not just capable of this role, but essential to it. Aeliana's throat worked, but she remained silent, listening. I cannot tell you this will be bearable, Maelorian said quietly. I cannot promise the staff will not break you, as it might have broken others had they been chosen. I can only tell you that if anyone can carry this burden without losing themselves beneath it, it is you. He extended the staff toward her. Aeliana Vale, do you accept the mantle of Ambassador Guardian, the first of your kind, to serve as the bridge between Alfheim and all realms, to speak with the voice of the balance itself, to carry knowledge no one else has carried, and to walk a path no one has walked before you? The weight of the moment pressed down on the chamber like a physical thing. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Aeliana's voice rang clear and strong. I do. Do you swear to place the balance above personal desire, to serve the needs of realms over the wants of individuals, and to bear the burden of insight that lesser souls could not carry, even though you do not yet know what that burden truly is? A heartbeat of silence. I do. Then step forward, Maelorian said, and become the first to claim what has waited 3,000 years for one worthy to carry it. Aeliana moved up the steps to the dais, each footfall echoing in the silent chamber. She stopped before Maelorion, meeting his ancient gaze with her own. For just a moment his formal mask slipped, and she saw something in his eyes, concern, pride, and a trace of fear for what she was about to experience. May the balance guide you, he said softly, words meant for her alone, though the chamber's acoustics carried them everywhere. And may you find the strength to bear what it shows you. No one knows what you are about to experience, not even me, but I believe in you, Aeliana. I always have. He extended the staff toward her. Aeliana reached out, her fingers closing around the pale wood. And the world went white. She's standing in fire. No, standing in the aftermath of fire. Ash falling like snow. The sky above is wrong, torn, bleeding colours that shouldn't exist. Reality itself is wounded, and she can feel the pain of it like barbed wire wrapped around her lungs. She turns, trying to understand where she is. Fragments. Nothing connects. A city that might be Concordia, or might be Alfheim, or might be Earth. All of them burning, all of them breaking, all of them dying. No, she tries to say, but no sound comes out. The ash falls heavier now, burying everything. Movement ahead, through the destruction. A figure, small, a child, walking with purpose through the devastation. Not fleeing, not lost. Walking like someone who knows exactly where they're going, exactly what they're doing. Each step deliberate, each step certain. She tries to call out, to warn them, but her voice is gone, swallowed by the silence that comes after the end of everything. The child keeps walking, and as they walk, the realms around them continue to burn. Not because of the child, but because of something the child represents. Some choice not yet made, some path not yet taken. She can't see the face, too much smoke, too much distance, too much everything, but she sees the eyes when they turn toward her for just a moment. Firelit eyes in a young face, human maybe, or elf, or something else entirely. The features won't resolve like looking at something through water, and then she sees more. Realms collapsing into each other. Boundaries dissolving like sugar in rain. A war that makes the Void Warlock look like a training exercise. The balance itself shattering, not tilting but breaking completely, scales crashing down. The child standing at the centre of it all, neither light nor dark, neither saviour nor destroyer. Just standing there, waiting. Waiting for something that hasn't happened yet. waiting for someone who hasn't arrived. Another figure appears in the distance, waiting. She can't make out details. Everything is fragments, pieces that don't fit together, puzzle pieces from different puzzles forced into the same box. The child walks toward the waiting figure, and just before they meet, the vision fractures. Reality splinters like glass struck by a hammer. She sees 1,000 possible futures layered over each other, none of them complete, all of them terrifying. The child as a weapon. The child as a savior. The child as the end of everything. The child as the beginning of something new. And through it all, one word, not spoken, not written, but felt in every fibre of her being. Choice, not her choice, not yet, but a choice that will come. A choice that will determine which of these fractured futures becomes real. The vision screams silence, the loudest nothing she's ever heard. Then it slams back into. Aeliana gasped, her knees buckling. Only her grip on the staff kept her upright. The council chamber snapped back into focus, too bright, too solid, too real after the nightmare of ash and impossible futures. The 7 crystals at the staff's head were blazing now, pulsing in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Power coursed through the wood and into her hands, up her arms, settling somewhere behind her heart like a second pulse she'd never noticed was missing. Every member of the council was on their feet, concern written across even the most composed faces. Mylorion had moved forward, both hands hovering near her as if to catch her should she fall, his formal composure completely abandoned. "Aeliana," he said, his voice sharp with worry. "What did you see?" She blinked, trying to clear her vision, trying to separate what was real from what the staff had shown her. Her hands were shaking. She could still smell the ash, still feel the heat of burning realms, still hear the terrible silence that came after the end of everything. The staff pulsed against her palms, warm and alive, and with each pulse she felt something. The boundaries between realms, maybe, or the threads that held reality together, or both. It was like suddenly being able to feel a sense she didn't know existed. Like a blind person given sight, but for something beyond sight. I. Her voice came out rough. She swallowed, tried again. I saw realms burning. The council members exchanged sharp glances. Several leaned forward, suddenly very interested. One, an ancient elf with silver hair, had gone pale. All of them? Councillor Thalis asked, his political mask cracking to show genuine alarm. I don't know, Aeliana said, her voice steadying as she forced herself back into the present. Fragments. Nothing complete. Just destruction. Chaos. Reality itself breaking down. The balance not just tilting, but shattering. And? Mylorion prompted gently, though there was nothing gentle about the intensity in his eyes. Aeliana's grip on the staff tightened. The crystals pulsed warmth against her palm, as if trying to comfort her. A child. Walking through the ash. Through all of it. I couldn't see details clearly. The vision kept fracturing, showing me pieces that didn't fit together. But the child walked with purpose, like they knew exactly where they were going. The council went very still. Too still. Aeliana's eyes narrowed slightly, catching that response. You know something about this. We know very little, Mylorion said carefully. But what you describe, it echoes certain writings, certain prophecies. What prophecies? Aeliana demanded. None that you need concern yourself with yet. Another council member, an elder named Vaelian, said firmly. Prophecies are possibilities, not certainties. What matters is what the staff showed you, not what ancient texts might have predicted. Aeliana wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, but another wave of sensation from the staff distracted her. She could feel the boundaries between realms now, actually feel them, like running her fingers across fabric and finding the seams. Earth was there and Alfheim, and 5 others she could name and a dozen she couldn't. all of them connected, all of them pressing against each other, all of them slowly, inevitably beginning to fray. "The boundaries," she said, her voice distant. "I can feel them. They're weakening. Not from assault, from age, like cloth, wearing thin." Melorian nodded. "Yes, that's what we believed, but we had no way to confirm it. The staff grants you that perception. What else?" Aeliana closed her eyes, trying to make sense of the new sense flooding through her. "The balance itself. I can feel it, not just as a concept, but as a weight, a pressure. It's holding, but barely, like something is pulling at it from multiple directions at once." "The child?" Melorian asked carefully. "No," Aeliana said, opening her eyes. "That's the strange part. The child wasn't causing the destruction in the vision. They were in it, but not of it. Like they were reacting to something else, something I couldn't see." She took a shaky breath, trying to organize the fragments into something coherent. "It felt like I was seeing a moment of choice," she said slowly. "Not my choice. Not yet. But a choice that will come. And depending on what choice is made, everything either burns or something else. I couldn't see the something else clearly, just that it was different from the burning." Councillor Thylis had been taking notes, actual physical notes, which was unusual for him. "Did you see when this might occur?" "No," Aeliana admitted. "No sense of time. It could be tomorrow or a century from now. Just fragments of a possible future." "Possible," Valian emphasized. "Not certain. The staff shows possibilities, not fixed fate. You must remember that, Ambassador Guardian. What you saw might never come to pass." But Aeliana had felt the weight of that vision, the reality of it. "It felt certain," she said quietly. "All futures feel certain until they're not," Mylorian said, his tone brooking no argument. "The staff will show you many things, Aeliana. Possible threats, potential futures, paths that might unfold. Your task is not to prevent all of them. That's impossible. Your task is to identify which possibilities are truly dangerous and which are simply the natural chaos of reality unfolding." She looked down at the staff in her hands. The crystals had stopped blazing and now pulsed with a gentler light, as if the staff itself had settled after the initial overwhelming connection. "I don't know how to do that," she admitted. "No one does," Melorian said simply, "because no one has done it before. You'll learn, or you won't, and we'll find someone else to carry the burden. But I suspect you'll learn." Aeliana wanted to argue, wanted to demand more preparation, more guidance, more something, but she could feel the truth in his words. This was uncharted territory. No amount of preparation could have readied her for what she'd just experienced. "Can you continue with the ceremony?" Mylorian asked, his voice gentle now. "If you need time." "No," Aeliana interrupted, straightening despite the exhaustion pulling at her. "I accepted this burden. I'll carry it." "Are you certain?" She met his gaze, drawing on centuries of guardian discipline to push past the lingering horror of the vision. "I am." Melorian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. He stepped back, resuming his formal posture, and his voice carried once more to every corner of the chamber. "Aeliana Vale has received the Staff of Realms and withstood its first revelation. She has proven herself capable of bearing knowledge that would shatter lesser minds. She has looked into possible futures and not broken beneath their weight." The council members settled back into their seats, though several continued to watch Aeliana with expressions that ranged from concern to something that looked almost like pity. "Your assignments are thus," Mylorion continued, his tone formal again. "You will establish the Earth Embassy, coordinating with their governmental structures as they prepare to reveal the existence of other realms to their populace. You will serve as Alfheim's primary liaison to all realms seeking diplomatic relations, and you will undertake the traditional rounds, visiting each of the 7 realms to reaffirm our commitment to the ancient covenants and to introduce yourself as the first Ambassador Guardian." He paused, and his voice took on additional weight. "You will report to the Senior 3 for guidance and counsel, but temporary agreements may be made at your discretion pending formal council approval. In matters of immediate necessity, you are authorized to speak with Alfheim's voice and with the voice of the balance itself. This is unprecedented authority, granted because your role is unprecedented. Use it wisely." Aeliana bowed her head in acknowledgement, still processing the vision, the new sense of the boundaries, the weight of the staff that seemed both impossibly heavy and strangely natural in her hands. "Are there any who would challenge this appointment?" Melorian asked, the ritual question that had to be asked, even though the answer was clearly, "I would question it." Every head in the chamber turned. From the visitors' section, not the council seats, an elf rose. Female, wearing robes marked with the sigil of Luminae, one of the allied realms. Her bearing was diplomatic, her expression carefully sympathetic. Gunnar straightened in the gallery, his tactical instincts immediately recognizing a threat. Not physical, political. Maybe worse. "Ambassador Silvaris," Mylorian said, his tone carefully neutral, "you wish to address the council?" "I wish to address a concern," Silvaris replied, her voice carrying the practiced clarity of someone trained in public speaking. "One that Luminae's leadership has asked me to raise on their behalf." "Speak, then." Silvaris stepped forward, moving into the center of the chamber where all could see her. Her movements were graceful, her expression more sorrowful than accusatory, which somehow made it worse. "Guardian Vale's qualifications are beyond question," she began, and the preamble alone told Gunnar everything he needed to know about where this was going. Her service record speaks for itself. Her courage, her wisdom, her dedication to the balance, all of these are exemplary. She paused, as if reluctant to continue. "However," she said, and there it was. "Luminae has concerns about her ability to maintain the neutrality that this new role demands." "On what grounds?" Melorian asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Her attachment to the mortal," Silvaris said simply, "the human known as Gunnar. Commander of the pack." Every eye in the gallery turned to look at Gunnar. He kept his expression carefully neutral, years of interrogation training and hostile political environments keeping any reaction from his face. He'd been through worse than this. This was just theatre with better architecture. Below, Aeliana's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but she said nothing, waiting, letting the challenge play out. "Ambassador Guardians must serve the balance above all else," Silvaris continued, her tone reasonable, which made it more dangerous. "Their judgment cannot be compromised by personal attachments, by emotional entanglements, by loyalties that pull them away from their duty to all realms equally." She turned to gesture toward the gallery, toward Gunnar. "And yet, Guardian Vale has formed what can only be described as a profound attachment to a mortal leader, a human whose lifespan will end in mere decades, a blink compared to her own existence, a commander whose organization operates outside official channels, whose methods often conflict with diplomatic norms, whose very nature as a warrior makes him unsuited to understand the delicate work of maintaining balance through diplomacy rather than force." Her voice took on additional weight. "How can we trust Guardian Vale to make impartial decisions when the safety or interests of Earth, of one human specifically, might conflict with the broader balance? How can we expect her to negotiate objectively with Earth's governments when she shares a bed with someone who operates outside those governments' control? How can she serve as a bridge between realms when her heart lies firmly on one side of that bridge?" The chamber had gone very quiet. Silvaris looked at Aeliana directly now, and there was genuine sympathy in her expression, which made it worse than accusation would have been. "I do not question your love for him," she said softly. "I do not question that it is real or meaningful, or that he likely deserves it. But love is precisely the problem. Love makes us partisan. It compromises our judgment. It pulls our loyalties away from the universal toward the particular. And this role, the first Ambassador Guardian, carrier of the Staff of Realms, voice of the balance itself, cannot afford compromised judgment. She paused, letting her words settle. For the sake of all realms, Silverus concluded, I must ask the Council to reconsider this appointment. Not because Guardian Vale is unqualified, but because she has made herself unsuitable through her choices. The balance demands neutrality. She has chosen attachment. These two things cannot coexist. Silence fell over the chamber like a weight. In the gallery, Gunnar's expression remained perfectly neutral, but his hands were white-knuckled on the railing. Not because he was angry, though he was, but because he knew this moment was crucial for Aeliana, and any reaction from him would only make it worse. Below, Aeliana stood perfectly still, the Staff of Realms steady in her grip. When she spoke, her voice was measured, clear, and carried no trace of the emotional turmoil she must be feeling. You raise valid concerns, Ambassador Silvaris, she said, and her tone was so reasonable, so professional, that it cut through the political theatre like a blade. And I will address them directly. She turned slightly, making eye contact with different council members as she spoke, a technique that made it feel personal without being confrontational. You're correct that I have formed an attachment to Gunnar, Aeliana continued. I won't deny it or apologize for it. But you fundamentally misunderstand both the nature of that attachment and its impact on my judgment. She paused, and when she continued, her voice held conviction that couldn't be faked. Gunnar understands duty in ways few beings in any realm can comprehend. He has sacrificed personal comfort, safety, and peace for the protection of others. Not because he was bound by oath, but because he chose to. He operates outside official channels, not because he disdains authority, but because bureaucracy kills people when time is critical and lives are at stake. Her voice took on an edge. You say he has no understanding of what this role requires, but he understands the weight of command. He understands the burden of making decisions that affect thousands of lives. He understands standing between innocents and threats that want to devour them, and doing so not because it's glorious, but because it's necessary. If that's not understanding what guardians do, then perhaps we've forgotten what we're meant to serve. Several council members shifted, clearly listening now rather than just waiting for her to finish. As for his lifespan, Aeliana said, her voice softening slightly but losing none of its strength, you speak as if loving someone whose time is limited is a weakness. I would argue it's the opposite. Mortals understand the value of time in ways we, who have centuries, cannot. They understand urgency. They understand that every moment matters because they have so few. Gunnar doesn't have the luxury of waiting decades to make decisions. He must act now, or people die. That perspective, that understanding of the cost of inaction, is something I need. Something this role needs. She looked directly at Silvaris now. You ask how I can serve all realms equally when my heart lies with one individual. I ask you, how can anyone serve realms they don't truly understand? How can we maintain balance if we stand so far above the lives we're balancing that we forget their lives at all, not just abstract concepts to be managed? The council chamber was utterly silent now. Even those who had seemed skeptical were leaning forward, engaged. My relationship with Gunnar has taught me that wisdom isn't exclusive to long-lived races, Aeliana continued, her voice growing stronger. That courage doesn't require centuries to develop. That the short lives of mortals make their sacrifices more meaningful, not less. That attachment, real attachment, not political alliance, gives you stakes in the outcome, makes you care about getting it right, not just maintaining equilibrium. She gestured with the staff, the 7 crystals pulsing in response to her emotion. You say love makes us partisan. I say love makes us invested. And I would rather have someone making decisions about the balance who is invested in the actual lives at stake than someone who maintains perfect neutrality because they don't care enough about anyone to be moved. She took a breath, her voice dropping but losing none of its conviction. You're right that I cannot serve all realms equally, in the sense of feeling identical attachment to each, but that was never possible, and it's not what the balance requires. The balance requires fairness, not identical treatment. It requires understanding that different realms have different needs, different values, different ways of being in the world. And my relationship with Gunnar, my understanding of how mortals think, how they value their limited time, how they approach problems with urgency because they cannot afford patience, that understanding makes me better equipped to serve as bridge, not worse. She looked around the chamber now, meeting the eyes of council members, of observers, of everyone who was watching her defend not just her relationship, but her fitness for a role no one had held before. If the council believes that makes me unfit to serve, she said quietly, then I will accept that judgment. But I will not pretend that my experiences, all of them, including and especially my relationship with Gunnar, haven't made me a better guardian. They have. And they will make me a better ambassador guardian as well. She straightened, the staff held firmly in both hands. I am not asking permission to love him, she said, and her voice rang with finality. I am telling you that I do, and that it makes me stronger, not weaker. If you cannot accept an ambassador guardian who understands what she's protecting because she has personal stakes in the outcome, then you should choose someone else. But I will not apologize for caring. And I will not pretend that caring is a liability when it is, in fact, the foundation of everything we claim to serve. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Councillor Thalis spoke. A compelling argument, Guardian Vale. He looked at Silvaris. Though I suspect Ambassador Silvaris has more to say. Silvaris did look like she wanted to continue the challenge, her mouth opening, but Maelorian rose, and his presence commanded immediate attention. The ambassador from Luminae has raised her concerns, he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. Guardian Vale has addressed them. Does anyone else wish to speak? Several council members glanced at each other, but no one stood. The weight of Aeliana's words hung in the chamber like a verdict already rendered. Then I will speak, Maelorian said. His gaze swept the chamber, taking in both council and observers. Guardian Vale's relationship with Commander White has been known to this council for some time. We have watched, we have assessed, and we have concluded that far from compromising her judgment, it has deepened her understanding of what her duty serves. He looked directly at Silvaris. You express concern about neutrality, Ambassador. But neutrality without understanding is merely indifference dressed in diplomatic robes. Guardian Vale understands what is at stake in Earth's realm because she has walked among its people, fought beside them, seen their courage in the face of threats they cannot possibly comprehend. That understanding will serve the balance far better than detached observation ever could. Several council members nodded in agreement. Furthermore, Maelorian continued, the bonds we form do not weaken us unless we allow them to. Commander White does not control Guardian Vale's judgment. He informs it, just as our own relationships, with mentors, students, colleagues, inform ours. To suggest she cannot maintain objectivity while in a relationship is to suggest none of us can, which would rather call into question this entire council's legitimacy. A few quiet chuckles from the older council members. Even Silvaris looked slightly chastened. She will be the first to carry the Staff of Realms, Maelorion said. The first to walk this path. If we expect her to do so perfectly, according to traditions that do not yet exist for her role, we are fools. She will make mistakes. She will struggle. She will question her choices and ours. That is not failure. That is growth. That is exactly what this new role demands. He turned back to Aeliana. Your relationship with Commander White has been examined. We find it, if anything, an asset, rather than a liability. You have our confidence, Guardian Vale. Let no one suggest otherwise. The finality in his tone made it clear the challenge was over. If there are no further challenges, Mylorian said, his voice making it clear there shouldn't be, then we will proceed with the investiture. No one spoke. Even Silveris had settled back into her seat, recognizing a battle already lost. Mylorian turned to Aeliana, who had stood through the entire exchange with the Staff of Realms held steady in her hands, her expression calm despite what must have been churning beneath. Aeliana Vale, he said formally, the Council of Alfheim recognizes you as Ambassador Guardian, the first of your kind, carrier of the Staff of Realms, bridge between worlds, voice of the balance itself. May your service be long, your wisdom deep, and your burden bearable. The council members rose as one. May the balance hold, they said in unison. May the balance hold, Aeliana replied, her voice steady. And it was done. The chamber began to empty slowly, council members approaching Aeliana to offer formal congratulations or quiet counsel. In the gallery, the observers started to disperse, several casting curious or speculative glances at Gunnar as they passed. He ignored them all, his attention fixed on Aeliana below. She was handling the political necessities with grace, accepting congratulations, deflecting probing questions, maintaining the composure expected of her new role. But he could see the cost. In the slight tension around her eyes, the careful way she held the staff, as if it might show her another vision at any moment. The exhaustion beginning to show through despite her discipline. She handled that well, a voice said beside him. Gunnar turned to find Mylorian had somehow appeared in the gallery without him noticing, an impressive feat given Gunnar's trained awareness. She did, Gunnar agreed simply. Mylorian studied him for a moment. You didn't react to the challenge. Reacting would have made it worse, Gunnar said. This was her moment. Her response. I was just the topic under discussion. Most would have felt the need to defend themselves. Most haven't been through enough hostile political environments to know when silence is the better weapon, Gunnar replied. Mylorian made a thoughtful sound. You're good for her, you know, despite what Ambassador Silvaris suggested. Gunnar looked at him directly. Why do I feel like there's a but coming? No but, Mylorian said. Just awareness. The role she's accepted will demand much of her. Time, energy, focus. There will be periods when duty requires her full attention, when she cannot be divided between responsibilities and personal concerns. I know, Gunnar said. And you're prepared for that? I've been preparing for it since the day I met her, Gunnar replied. She's a guardian first. Everything else comes second. Always has. Mylorian studied him with those ancient eyes that seemed to see through carefully maintained masks. You understand her better than most of the council does. I understand duty, Gunnar said. The rest is details. The rest is everything, Mylorian corrected gently. But yes, you understand enough. He paused, his gaze drifting back to Aeliana below, still surrounded by well-wishers and political operators. She'll want to speak with you. But first, I need a moment with her privately. Would you wait in the Hall of Reflection? I'll send her to you there. Gunnar nodded. Of course. As Mylorian turned to leave, Gunnar spoke again. The vision she had, when she took the staff. It shook her. Mylorian stopped but didn't turn back immediately. When he did, his expression was troubled. The staff shows what the balance fears most. Sometimes those visions are warnings of immediate threats. Sometimes they're merely possibilities, futures that might unfold if certain choices are made or not made. Which was this? I don't know, Melorian said quietly. No one has carried that staff before. We don't know if what she saw is prophecy or paranoia given form. We don't know if it's something that will happen tomorrow or 1,000 years from now. We don't even know if it's a future that can be prevented or one that's already set in motion. But you have theories, Gunnar pressed. Melorian's expression became unreadable. I have concerns. But until I understand what she truly saw, what details she can recall when not standing in front of the entire council, I cannot say what those concerns mean. He paused. What she described, the child, the burning realms, the sense of choice, it echoes certain prophecies. But prophecies are notoriously vague, and trying to match visions to ancient texts is often an exercise in seeing what you want to see. You're worried, Gunnar observed. I'm always worried, Melorian replied. It's the burden of leadership. But yes, this troubles me more than most things do. He looked directly at Gunnar now. She'll need support. The staff will continue to show her things, possible futures, potential threats, the slow erosion of boundaries. She'll need someone who can help her distinguish between visions that matter and those that are simply noise. Someone who won't treat her like she's fragile because she's carrying a burden no one else can understand. I can do that, Gunnar said. I know you can, Melorian replied. That's why I'm telling you this, instead of simply dismissing you to wait elsewhere. He turned to leave, then paused once more. One more thing. If she tells you about the vision in detail, if she shares what she saw beyond what she told the council, I need to know. Not because I don't trust her judgment, but because I need to understand what the staff is showing her. What patterns are emerging? Send word through the locket if necessary. Gunnar inclined his head. Understood. Melorian nodded once more, then descended from the gallery with that impossible elven grace, moving through the dispersing crowd toward Aeliana. Gunnar took one last look at her, still composed, still handling the political necessities with the same discipline she brought to everything. Then made his way back to the Hall of Reflection. The hall was empty when he arrived, the starlight filtering through the crystalline ceiling, painting everything in shades of silver and blue. Gunnar moved to the same window where he'd stood earlier, looking out over Alfheim's impossible architecture. The city below was beautiful in a way that Earth could never be, not because Earth lacked beauty, but because this was beauty of a different kind. Intentional. Cultivated. The result of thousands of years of careful tending by people who had the time to perfect their craft. He understood why Aeliana loved it here, why she'd always carry a piece of this place with her, no matter how long she spent on Earth. And he understood, standing here in the heart of elven civilization, just how different their worlds were. Not just in architecture or magic, but in fundamental ways of seeing, thinking, being. The challenge Sylvaris had raised wasn't entirely wrong. There was a gap between them, between mortal and elf, between someone who measured time in decades and someone who measured it in centuries. The question was whether that gap was insurmountable, whether love and understanding could bridge it, or whether it would eventually pull them apart through simple incompatibility. Gunnar's hand moved unconsciously to the talisman beneath his shirt, feeling its subtle warmth against his skin. She'd given him this, a way to reach her across realms, across distances that should have been impossible, that meant something. Thought I'd find you here. He turned to find Aeliana standing in the doorway, the staff of realms held loosely in one hand. She looked exhausted, truly exhausted, not just tired but drained in a way he'd rarely seen. How are you? He asked. She crossed to him, and when she reached the window, she simply leaned against it, pressing her forehead to the cool crystal. I have a headache that feels like someone's trying to split my skull open from the inside. My hands won't stop shaking when I'm not actively controlling them, and I can feel things now. Boundaries between realms, the balance itself, the slow erosion of reality's structure, and I don't know how to turn it off, or even if I can turn it off. So, not great, Gunnar summarized. Despite everything, she almost laughed. Not great, she agreed. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. The vision. Do you want to talk about it? Aeliana was quiet for a long moment. Her eyes closed, forehead still pressed to the window. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It felt real. Not like a dream or a possibility. Real. Like I was standing in the aftermath of something that had already happened, even though I know it hasn't. She opened her eyes, staring out at the city below. I was in ash. Everything was burning, not actively on fire, but the kind of burning that's already consumed everything and is just waiting for the embers to die. The sky was wrong, Gunnar. Torn, bleeding colours that shouldn't exist. She straightened, turning to face him, and he could see the haunted look in her eyes. And there was a child, just walking through it all. Not running, not scared. Walking like they had somewhere to be, something to do. I couldn't see details. The smoke was too thick. Everything kept fracturing and reforming. But I saw their eyes when they looked at me, firelit. Human, maybe. Or elf. Or something else. The features wouldn't hold still enough for me to tell. Did you see what they were walking toward? Gunnar asked. Another figure, waiting in the distance. I couldn't make out who or what. Her hands tightened on the staff, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the feeling that came with it. Not fear exactly, more like inevitability. Like this was a moment that was always going to happen, and the only question was whether I'd be ready for it when it did. Gunnar processed this, his tactical mind automatically trying to assess threat, timeline, actionable intelligence. The council seemed to recognize what you were describing. They did, Aeliana said, frustration bleeding into her voice. I could see it in their faces. Some went pale. Others exchanged looks. They know something about this, about the child, or the vision, or both. But they won't tell me. Why not? My Elorian said something about prophecies and free will, that telling me too much might interfere with choices I need to make freely. She shook her head. I hate that reasoning. How am I supposed to make good choices if I don't have all the information? You make them anyway, Gunnar said. Same as always. With the information you have, not the information you wish you had. She looked at him, something in her expression softening. You make it sound simple. It is simple, he replied. Not easy. But simple. You assess the situation. You identify the threat. You decide on a course of action. You execute. The fact that you're missing pieces doesn't change the process. It just means you have to be ready to adapt when those pieces reveal themselves. Aeliana let out a long breath, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. I've spent the last hour being congratulated by people who look at me like I'm either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish for accepting this role. I needed to hear something practical. You're both, Gunnar said. Brave and foolish. Most people who do important work are. This time she did laugh, quiet but genuine. Thank you, I think. They stood together in silence for a moment, the weight of the ceremony and everything that had happened settling around them. Sylvaris, Aeliana said finally, her challenge. Did it bother you? She called me your attachment and suggested I'm unsuited to understand your work, Gunnar replied. She wasn't wrong on either count. Gunnar, she wasn't wrong on the facts, he clarified. Just the conclusion. Yeah, I'm mortal. Yeah, my organization operates outside official channels. Yeah, I don't fully understand elven politics or the intricacies of maintaining cosmic balance, but she assumed those things make me a liability. You proved they don't. Aeliana studied his face. You really didn't mind? Having our relationship questioned in front of the entire council? Being treated like you're some complication I need to overcome? I've been called worse by better people, Gunnar said. What matters is that you defended us. Not because you felt obligated to, but because you believe what you said. That our relationship makes you better at your job, not worse. I believe that too. She reached out, her fingers finding his hand. The touch was simple, grounding. Thank you. For being here, for not reacting, for understanding that I needed to fight that battle myself. Always, he said simply. Her grip tightened slightly. Malorian pulled me aside after, asked me about the vision in more detail. He's worried, though he's trying to hide it. Whatever I saw, it connects to something he knows about but can't or won't explain. He told me to let him know if you shared more details with me, Gunnar said. He needs to understand what patterns are emerging. Aeliana's expression darkened. So he can keep secrets more effectively? So, he can protect you from walking blind into something he's already seen coming, Gunnar corrected. He's your mentor, Aeliana. Whatever he's not telling you, it's because he thinks telling you would make it worse, not better. You know him well enough to trust that. She was quiet for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. I do trust him. I just hate being kept in the dark. Welcome to command, Gunnar said dryly, where you're simultaneously told you have ultimate authority and kept from information you need to use that authority effectively. Is that what human leadership is like? That's what all leadership is like, he replied. The people above you keep secrets. The people below you keep secrets. Your job is to make the best decisions you can with incomplete information and hope you're right, more often than you're wrong. Aeliana looked at him, something shifting in her expression. How do you live with that? The uncertainty. Because the alternative is paralysis, Gunnar said. If I waited until I had perfect information, people would die while I was waiting. So I act on what I have. Sometimes I'm wrong, but at least I'm wrong while trying to do something useful rather than right while doing nothing at all. She absorbed this, her ancient eyes holding something that looked almost like admiration. You make it sound so practical. It is practical, he said. Everything else, the grand purpose, the cosmic significance, the weight of destiny, that's just noise. What matters is the people in front of you who need protecting. You protect them with the tools you have and the information you have. The rest you figure out as you go. Aeliana moved closer until they were standing face to face, the staff held between them almost like a barrier, or perhaps a reminder of what now separated her from everyone else. This is going to change things, she said quietly, more than I expected. The staff, the role, the assignments. I'll be travelling between realms constantly. Establishing the Earth Embassy will take months. The diplomatic rounds could take years. And the whole time, I'll be carrying this. She gestured with the staff. Seeing things no one else sees. Knowing things no one else knows. Walking a path no one has walked before. I know, Gunnar said. There will be times when I have to choose duty over everything else, she continued. Over you. Over us. Over my own needs. The balance won't care about convenient timing. I know that too. Are you ready for that? She asked, searching his face. Really ready? Because Sylvaris might have been politically motivated, but she wasn't entirely wrong. Being with me, especially now with this new role, will be complicated, frustrating, sometimes impossible. Gunnar met her gaze steadily. I've spent most of my adult life in impossible situations. This is just a different kind of impossible. He paused. Are you ready for it? Because I can handle complicated. The question is whether you can balance being Ambassador Guardian with being whatever we are to each other. Aeliana was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled, tired, but genuine. No, she admitted. I'm not ready. I have no idea how I'm going to balance this role with having any kind of personal life. I don't know if the visions will drive me mad or if I'll learn to handle them. I don't know if I'll be good at this or if I'll be the first ambassador guardian who fails before she even really begins. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. But I'm doing it anyway, she continued, because someone has to. Because the realms need this bridge even if I'm terrified of being it. And because I refuse to let fear, of failure, of complications, of choosing wrong, stop me from trying to do something that matters. Gunner's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing just beneath her eye where exhaustion had drawn faint shadows. That's my girl. She leaned into the touch just for a moment, letting herself be something other than Ambassador Guardian, other than bearer of the Staff of Realms, other than the first to walk an impossible path. Just Aeliana, with someone who saw her that way. We should go, she said finally, though she didn't move. I need to debrief with Maelorion properly. And you should check in with Desira about Alpha's behavior. We've been here for hours. One more minute, Gunnar said. She nodded, allowing herself that minute, allowing herself this moment of quiet connection before they returned to their separate duties, their separate worlds, their separate burdens. When they finally pulled apart, Aeliana straightened, adjusting her grip on the staff. The exhaustion was still there, but beneath it, something else, determination, maybe. Or simply the stubborn refusal to break that had carried her through 2 centuries of Guardian service. Ready? Gunnar asked. No, she said, but I'm going anyway. They walked together through the halls of Alfheim's council building, side by side but not touching, maintaining the professional distance her new role would require more often than not. At the portal chamber, they paused. I'll see you back on Earth, Aeliana said. After I finish here. A few hours, maybe less. I'll be at the workshop, Gunnar replied. Take your time. Do what you need to do. She nodded, then surprised him by stepping forward and pressing her forehead briefly against his, the same gesture she'd made years ago when he'd first helped her, a connection that transcended words. Thank you, she said quietly, for understanding, for being here, for not making this harder than it already is. Always, he said again. Then she stepped back, composed herself, and walked toward Maelorion's private office, the staff of realms held firmly in her hand, every inch the ambassador guardian she'd just become. Gunnar watched her go, then turned and walked through the portal, back to Earth, back to the workshop, back to the questions about Alpha that still needed answering. Behind them both, in the now empty hall of reflection, starlight filtered through crystal and painted patterns on the floor that looked almost like prophecy written in light. Maelorion stood at the window, having watched the entire exchange from the shadows. His expression was troubled, his ancient eyes seeing connections that neither Gunnar nor Aeliana had yet grasped. May the balance hold, he whispered to the empty room, but for the first time in centuries, he genuinely wasn't sure it would. The vision Aeliana had described, the child, the burning realms, the sense of inevitable choice, matched too closely to prophecies he'd sworn never to reveal. Prophecies that spoke of bloodlines converging, of warriors and guardians, of children born from impossible unions who would either save everything or destroy it all. He'd hoped the prophecies were wrong, that they were simply ancient paranoia given form by seers who'd looked too deep into possibility and mistaken shadow for substance. But Aeliana had seen it. The staff had shown it to her, which meant it wasn't just prophecy anymore. It was warning, and he still couldn't tell her. Couldn't tell either of them. Because the prophecies were clear on one thing. The choices had to be made freely, without foreknowledge, or they would create the very futures they sought to prevent. Maelorion turned from the window and walked toward his office, where Aeliana would be waiting for him. Where he would have to look his best student in the eyes and continue to keep secrets from her. For her own good, for the good of all realms, he hoped.